Hello, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking all about the top 10 sports romances of all time according to you. This is the fourth video in a series where I ask my subscribers what their favorite books are in a given subgenre, and then I take the top 10 submissions, the top 10 that have been submitted like a million times, and I let you know what those books are. Some of the books I love, some of the books I loathe, but I am asking fellow romance lovers to let me know what their faves are in a subgenre so that I can give you a fairly unbiased look at the subgenre and maybe some potential picks for you if you are new. So if you've never read a sports romance before, hopefully you'll be able to find a book off this list to read. If you are a seasoned romance reader, hopefully there's at least one book on this list that you haven't given a try so far. So I'm going to be running you through the books that my subscribers submitted in order from least to most popular, but even the least popular book on this list is still very, very popular. So first up, we have Him by Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy. This is a male-male romance that follows estranged friends Jamie and Wes. They attended summer camp together back in the day. I can't remember if it was like multiple summer camps or just one summer camp. Full disclosure, it's been a while since I've read this one. I think the last time I read this was like in 2019, but they were super close until they had a little bit of a misunderstanding or a tricky situation in which Wes was trying really hard to get Jamie to participate in a bet with him, and the bet was a little gay, shall we say. So they haven't talked in years, but they come back to this camp that they both used to love growing up, and they are now going to be coaches at this hockey camp. Things get a little bit interesting when we find out that Jamie might not be as straight as he thought that he was. I initially rated this book 4 stars, but I will be honest with you, like I said, I haven't read this one since 2019, so I don't have a lot of memories about it. The only thing that I remember is that the sequel of this book has some really great mental health representation, especially when it comes to depression, and I did remember liking the kind of mix of harder hitting topics and sweet tender moments in this book. I think Elle Kennedy specifically really does a great job juggling both of those things. This book was published in 2015, and I looked at some of the Goodreads reviews, and they're mixed. Some people say that there are elements in here that they find problematic. Other people think that it still holds up many years later, but that's obviously for you to judge for yourself if you want to pick this book up. Y'all said that this book was really wholesome. Childhood friends who reunite after not speaking for years. I love how Jamie's family was so accepting of him and Wes's relationship. Just perfection, and I can't really argue with that. Next up, we have Long Shot by Kennedy Ryan. This is a book that is definitely more on the harder hitting side of things when it comes to romance in general, but specifically sports romance. It's a hard hitting basketball romance, and it follows our two main characters, August and Iris. They meet under sort of interesting circumstances. I want to say, from my recollection, August is basically instantly attracted to Iris. They meet up at a bar, I want to say. I think it's sort of like a chance encounter, and they have this undeniable chemistry, and you're so excited to see kind of what unfolds between the two, but there is sort of a snag in that plan when we find out that Iris is actually engaged to someone else, and she ends up marrying this man. So this is sort of a star-crossed lovers situation between August and Iris. It is a really challenging read, but a really rewarding one, I think. Unfortunately, Iris becomes a survivor of domestic violence and domestic abuse, and we do see that on page, so if that's something you're sensitive to, I would check all of the content warnings going into the book. She does not face that with the hero of the story, but it is a really hard romance. It's a really hard romance to recommend because I think it is one that is really tricky, and that's something that I saw time and time again in your reviews of the book, or like why you loved it, because I ask people, what did you love about this book? And I let you know, in this video, what people actually enjoyed about these books, and so many people detailed in their why I loved it that this is not necessarily a book that they would recommend widely because of the content in it, but that it is a really rewarding romance, and one that really just shows the redemptive power almost of love, and how love could really change someone and also can help them heal from some of the harder things in life. So y'all said that this is a difficult book to read because it deals with a very hard and delicate topic, but it's such a beautiful story. I don't know how Kennedy does it, but the way she's able to establish chemistry from the very first meeting is amazing. Couldn't agree more. It's a roller coaster ride, but it's incredible to see a strong heroine who goes through so much and still comes out on top. And the love story is just so beautiful. It's definitely a right person, wrong time situation, and you're rooting for them to get back to each other so much. The whole Hoops trilogy is fantastic. Not something I also agree with. I actually just read the second and third books in the Hoops trilogy just a month or two ago at this point, and I loved both of them. Someone else said that it is a beautiful love story set against the backdrop of basketball, and then someone else said it's not super heavy on the sports, but if you pick up this romance, you won't be disappointed. And honestly, again, can't argue with that. Next up, we are moving back into the lighthearted territory, and we have Blindside by Candy Steiner. Now, I hadn't read much Candy Steiner up until this point. Blindside's actually one of the first books that I read by this author, and I was instantly drawn in by the writing style, and just how fun the series as a whole is. It's the second book in the Red Zone Rival series. I actually read this one before reading the first one. I mean, to this day, I still haven't read the first one in the series, so they can certainly be read as standalones, but this book follows Gianna and Clay. Gianna is a kind of good girl who is dreaming of romance and dreaming of the day when she finally gets to, I don't know, have sex with someone super, super hot. And Clay is in sort of like the opposite situation. He is getting out of a long-term relationship, and he's kind of facing some difficulty because of that. He's getting some sort of bad PR from the like long-term girlfriend that he used to be with, that he is now no longer in a relationship with. And to kind of correct some of the bad reputation damage that he's gotten from his ex-girlfriend, Gianna, the PR coordinator for the football team, steps in and tries to kind of clean up his reputation a little bit. And this basically results in a mutually beneficial fake dating relationship in which Gianna will date Clay so that Clay can, I guess, kind of make his ex-girlfriend jealous. And then Gianna has had her eyes set on this really like hot guy on campus who is a guitar player. He's a musician. She thinks that by dating Clay, she will, attract his attention, and this guitar playing guy will really be into her. It does work, I will say. This fake relationship kind of works for the both of them. It's a lot more complicated than that, right? Like, you get these two developing feelings for each other as they're supposed to be developing feelings for other people, and it is such a delight to watch. It's not exactly a revolutionary idea. There's actually another book on this list that has a very similar premise, but the execution is all candy. It is so fun to read. I loved Gianna's character, I loved Clay's character, and I loved seeing them develop a sexual relationship together. But let me stop gushing and let you know what other people liked about this book. You said that you love the character development for Clay, and the way he treats Gianna and her inexperience is gold. This book is everything you want a sports romance, and done well. As a feminist, I feel like I should hate the trope where the experienced hero teaches the inexperienced heroine simply on principle, because I have no desire to have a man teach me anything, especially when my own pleasure is considered. But hot damn, I love this book. Clay, the hero, is a perfect mix of respectful and filthy, while Gianna, the heroine, is one of those characters who's scarily relatable. Plus, he reads her tabbed romance books to figure out what she likes in bed, which is how you know he is absolutely a man written by a woman. While I can't argue with the fact that Clay is certainly the shit and definitely raises the bar for romance heroes, I do think that you should be able to find a partner in real life who can, read smut and listen to your needs. So I'm just putting that out there between me and you. But let's move on to the next romance. We have a classic, The Score by Elle Kennedy. So there are two books on this list from the Off-Campus series by Elle Kennedy, which I know is widely loved for very good reason. She has such a talent when it comes to writing series and getting you to be really hyped about the romances of upcoming side characters, or like romances of side characters that are upcoming. This book is my favorite of the bunch because the hero is pretty standout. So this story is about Allie and Dean. So Allie is fresh off of a breakup at the beginning of the story, and she's also about to graduate college with not a lot of ideas on what she wants to do. And rebound sex with Dean is probably not the brightest move, but he proves too sexy to be turned down. After one night of passion, Allie is super impressed with Dean's skills in the boudoir, but she's not really necessarily looking for a repeat. She's definitely going to put Dean firmly in the friend zone, but after this, raucous night of passionate lovemaking, Dean is not satisfied with just one night. He wants more from Allie. And this book is so fun because we have Dean relentlessly but respectfully pursuing Allie. And I love that. I love a guy who falls first and a guy who is really intent and knows what he wants. Bill said that you love seeing two characters who think they would never be good together find out that they're actually perfect for each other. It's the perfect mix of angst and fluff and banter. I also like how this one isn't so traditional in terms of the sports plotline. Dean isn't like dying to go pro or whatever most other sports characters try and do. Someone else said that they love the entire Off-Campus series, but the third book is by far their favorite. Couldn't agree more. I absolutely loved Dean and Allie's relationship and getting to see them both grow as characters. In the first book of the series, Dean comes off as such an entitled guy, but when I read The Score, I loved getting to see he really has a heart of gold. This book also really shocked me with the grief representation that we got from all the characters involved. Overall, I just have so much love for the series and these characters. Oh, and also Dean fucking De Laurentiis. I will say yes, there definitely is grief representation in this book, so if that's something you're sensitive to, or if you don't want to read about people who are dealing with grief head on, I totally understand why this book might not be the perfect pick for you, but I really love the way it was handled. And I also really loved, again, that this book had so many sexy, lighthearted moments, but also, again, that like signature combination of lighthearted moments with kind of harder hitting real life issues that Elle Kennedy seems to do so well. So this book is definitely worth a read. Next up, we have another male-male romance on this list, Heated Rivalry by Rachel Reed. So what I'm learning from this list, and I think this is something that I've already talked about at this point, is that a lot of the popular stuff on this list is stuff that I have not read in ages. I actually read this book for the first time back in 2019, and it is the only time that I've read this book. Though I am definitely due for a reread because I do remember having such fond memories of this book. I think at the time I called this my favorite sports romance of all time, maybe my favorite male-male romance of all time, because it really does enemies to lovers in a way that I think is different than a lot of other books. This book is about our two main characters, Shane and Ilya. They're both really, really famous NHL players on rival teams. The media has kind of pitted these two against each other, and this rivalry is very, very real. It's not just played up for the media. They both don't like each other pretty much at all. And anytime they come into contact, there's like, they butt heads for sure. Until one day, the headbutting definitely turns into something fueled by more than just hatred. And so you have this delicious relationship between the two of them that is definitely very real with the enemies to lovers component, but is also, complicated by the fact that they're very attracted to each other. So over a 10-year span, they're having sex and sort of avoiding the feelings part of their relationship. And you get to see them fighting on the ice, fighting sexually, and then also like fighting their feelings for each other. And it is just such a fun progression to see. I know that everybody has a different, view of enemies to lovers. I think some people in the reviews I saw called this a rivals to lovers situation, and that the only real enemies to lovers is in fantasy. And I think it's all semantics, honestly, to me, as long as there is a, definite progression between them hating each other to them loving each other, it's all enemies to lovers to me. I don't really care that much. It doesn't have to be that intense, but this book is intense, and I did actually really, really enjoy that aspect of the book. Let's hear what y'all had to say. I feel like this book is the first book I've read that completely nails the rivals/enemies to lovers trope, in my opinion. Couldn't agree more. Many people have different opinions on what a rivals to lovers romance should look like, but for me, a perfect rivals to lovers romance is more like a rivals with benefits to lovers. The tension in this book is literally chef's kiss. The way the characters interact while still being enemies, but also having sex in secret at the same time, is absolutely perfect. I also love the way they slowly develop actual feelings for each other. It doesn't feel rushed or weird, and unlike many other enemies to lovers stories, the tension doesn't disappear as soon as they fall in love, which is so true. I think that's something that I really, really loved about this book, is that even when they are like regularly having sex, you still feel like there is more at stake there because they haven't developed that like love for each other yet. Someone else said that they actually read this book on a complete whim when they saw my review of it show up on Goodreads and absolutely devoured it in one day. I've reread it since then and love it just as much every time. It's an all-time fave. Ilya and Shane have the perfect dynamic. The angst is everything. The conflict is everything. It also has the whole saying I love you accidentally in my native language thing, which may not be a thing, but God, it made me melt. I want everyone to read and love this book. And then lastly, what's more sports romance than two NHL rivals falling into bed with each other in their rookie year and then following them for 10 years as they fall in love and earn their happily ever after? This book does such a good job pacing out the romance. It manages to make a 10-year affair never get stale. We see the main characters grow and mature while watching their feelings grow from competitive lust to committed love. The characterization of these two is also super strong. They're so charming in their own way, but with those puzzle piece flaws that allow them to complement each other so well. I mean, y'all said it better than I ever could. Y'all are making me want to reread this book, and I think that is part of the charm of this video, is like getting to hear people really hype up the romances that they love. Oh, also say hi to Honey. I am babysitting my sister's cats for spring break, so we've got new co-stars in the videos. But let's move on to the next romance. Next up, we have, I think maybe the newest title on this list, and it's, I think, the book that I've read most recently. Give or take. We have Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. So I read this book back in November, and I think I read this book at the perfect time in this book's life cycle. I think lately books have been going through a very particular life cycle with the advent of Book Talk. Book Talk tends to really hype up books, then people will read them and maybe be disillusioned, or like maybe the book doesn't live up to their expectations, so then you see a lot of criticism for a book and a lot of like pushback, and then the book and the hype just kind of dies down for a little bit, and then you either have like a resurgence of the book, or you have like new people reading the book that have no expectations who end up loving it. So things repeat, things go through cycles. And I think I picked this book up at the perfect time because it was going through that like critique cycle. I hadn't really seen this book hyped up. I'm not really a Book Talk girly, like I'm not on Book Talk. I don't get my recommendations from there, but I knew that this book was really, really hyped going into it, and that a lot of people were like disappointed by it. And I think that made for a very enjoyable reading experience because I thought this book was a whole lot of fun. This book is about our two main characters, Anastasia and Nathan. Anastasia is I was going to say hockey player. She's an ice skater, and Nathan is a hockey player, and both of their respective teams have to share an ice rink together. And after a series of events in which Nathan is not like kicked off of the hockey team necessarily, but I don't know, through a series of events, he ends up becoming the pair's figure skater to Anastasia. She kind of has to teach him how to go from just being a simple hockey player to a amazing Paris figure skater. I feel like, I mean, I pulled this synopsis directly from Goodreads, but I don't feel like the synopsis really does the book a whole lot of credit. Like the plots are definitely more complex than that, but I think that's okay. So this book is kind of a semi-enemies to lovers situation with a fair amount of smut and a lot of side characters. The latter of which is something that I know that people complained about. I think the two main complaints I saw with this book were that there were too many side characters and that got confusing, and that the writing style didn't work for people. And for me, I didn't really have issues with either, which I appreciate. The only thing that I didn't love was the fact that there were maybe a few too many subplots in this story. If it had like played out exactly as I told you in the synopsis, I think I would have been very happy. There are some like other elements that come in that kind of irritated me. That being said, I just still had a really fun time with this one, and I probably will be picking up book 2. But let's hear what y'all had to say, because I know that y'all have some very strong feelings about this book. First up, all the gooiness you could want in a romance and the communication between characters to back it up. I haven't finished it yet, so I can't speak on if there's a stupid third act conflict, but I can already tell this is going to be one of my favorite books of the year. There's just something about a golden retriever cinnamon roll guy that gives me major heart eyes. Someone else really loved the well-rounded plot with found family elements. The romance was to die for. She is grumpy and he is all sunshine. Well done jealousy trope, forced proximity. I loved how the main characters communicated so well. Not to mention the spice. Do not let this cover fool you. Some of the best smutty scenes that I've ever read. And then lastly, a grumpy girl goes to therapy and a man that does not hesitate to get on his knees. This feels like Gen Z is finally starting to get published, and I am living for it. We've got our main man and his group of friends repping healthy male relationships. One is bi/queer, one is, I think, supposed to be autistic, one is in a wheelchair, and none of these things are their entire personality. The side characters feel like real people, not just opportunities to add some diversity for the sake of saying it's there. I adored this. And I do have to say, I really did love the side characters in this book. Yes, there are many of them, but they were all unique and all fun to read about, and I do want to see their romances. So I really liked this book. It's not a super serious one. I mean, there are some serious issues in there, but for the most part, it's just a fun new adult romance. All right, before we drown in the sea of Mariana Zapata slow burn, let's talk about the sports romance that kind of started it all in my eyes, The Deal by Elle Kennedy. It's the first book in the off-campus series, and it is an oldie but a goodie. Our main character, Hannah, in this book is convinced that there is something wrong with her because she has a little bit of sexual baggage. She wants to have sexual feelings for a man. She wants to find the perfect guy to bang, but it is not until recently where she has found someone that is like worthy of her attentions, right? But there's an obstacle in the way for her in the form of the captain of the hockey team, who she needs to tutor in exchange for a pretend date to make the guy that she likes jealous. So the premise for this book is very similar to Blindside by Candy Steiner. There are honestly dozens of sports romances that feel very similar to this one in terms of like the tutor and the, you know, captain of the football team sort of situation. But definitely between Blindside and The Deal, there is like a lot of difference in terms of like how the plots play out and just how they're written. I mean, I wouldn't say read them back to back or anything, but I think you could definitely read and enjoy both of these books. Like I mentioned for the score, I really like that Elle Kennedy is so adept at blending heart and humor. It's one of the first books that I ever read that was set in college, and I think it's the first sports romance that I ever read, and it really got me down the path of just like totally falling hook, line, and sinker for sports romances. There's just so much opportunity when you're able to tell a story about a team, because then there's like, you know, ripe opportunity for you to write books about other team members, and also it's just fun seeing other people like kind of around the main characters and kind of rooting them on. So let's hear from y'all about what you enjoyed about this book. It's definitely the first hockey romance I ever read, and it definitely stirred something within me. This is a fun romance, and it doesn't waste time. Once Hannah realizes she likes Garrett and not the other guy anymore, we move on. Her previous crush isn't used as an annoying plot device for why they can't be together, and I also love that Elle Kennedy makes fun of the third act breakup within the book. Someone else said that this is one of their favorite sports romances. It stood out to them because there was a tangible attraction, but other than that, there was so much fucking chemistry. The way the protagonists interacted with each other had them crooning and swooning because everything was so believably constructed. Chef's kiss, honestly. And lastly, the banter between Hannah and Garrett is just so good. I love how they start with a friendship and it grows to romance. It felt really organic throughout, which can be hard to do. Unfortunately, it didn't make me care about hockey, but that's really not the point. And you know what? That is very true. I will say, this is the first hockey romance I've ever read, and I don't think I have seen a single hockey game since finishing this book. However, if you say it's a hockey romance, sign me the fuck up, because Elle Kennedy has conditioned me to believe that all hockey romances are going to be fun. So hats off to her for that. All right, now let's let's get freaky, but in a slow burn way with our queen of slow burn, Miss Mariana Zapata. She is by far, in a way, the most popular sports romance author, I guess. I wasn't expecting that result. I definitely did expect to see some of her sports romances on this list, but I did not expect that the top 3 romances, like the most submitted, the most voted for romances on this list, all 3 of them would be Mariana Zapata books. But you know what? That's fine. I get it. The girlies love slow burn. So let me walk you through them. First up, we have Colty. This book is about a professional women's soccer player named Sal who falls for her assistant coach, Colty. Colty is a famous former soccer player who has a bit of a reputation for being a little bit of an asshole, and Sal knows this better than anyone because Colty had sort of a weird run-in with our main character's older brother, who is also a soccer player. So the book is spent with Sal and Colty kind of, I don't want to say fighting their feelings for each other. The feelings don't come until much later into the book, but they kind of trade barbs and then also trade kind gestures back and forth throughout the course of the story. He helps her become a better soccer player. He helps her stand up for herself, and she in return helps him be a normal human being, which I really, really enjoyed reading about. This gave me all of the like Bend It Like Beckham feels, but like fleshed out, because I feel like there wasn't really a fleshed out relationship in that movie, but I desperately wanted there to be. This, I think, might be my favorite sports romance by Mariana Zapata. I actually reread it recently for this video because it's the first book I read by her and I never reread it, so I was like, oh, are my feelings going to hold up? And for the most part they did, I will say. I think the first time I read this book I gave it 5 stars. I think upon reflection maybe like 4.5 stars. The ending of this book just really fucking does it for me. I really love this book. So y'all said this book felt like a great portrayal of a relationship with fully developed characters and realistic everyday conflict. Having the female main character be the main sports aspect also separated this from other more recent new adult sports romances. And you know what? You're right. I feel like a lot of the sports romances we read, the heroine is not a part of the team. Now that I'm thinking about it though, I think in the first book in that Candy Steiner series, the Red Zone Rivalry series, that first book does have a female football player, so I need to go back and read that. But that is a good point because that is a very rare thing to see in our sports romance. Someone else said the Friends to Lovers was just immaculate. The way we got to see them doing mundane things like face masks or playing soccer together was just so swoony, and they just love a slow burn. And you know what? I think a lot of y'all do. Lastly, I've recently gotten into sports romance and I've been having such a hard time finding a book that hits the emotional buildup in a relationship along with fleshed out side characters and actual information and scenes regarding the sport. But Colty gave me all of that and more. I loved the female main characters' relationships, not just with Colty, but with her teammates and especially with her dad. And I will say that is a standout part of this book. I do think in some of Mariana Zapata's other books, for the most part, the heroines tend to have estranged relationships with their family or like deceased family members. I don't know. But this book definitely has like a good familial relationship situation, and I really did like love the relationship between Sal and her dad, and also her dad and Colty. So sweet. Love this book. It is it's a classic for a reason. Next up, we have From Look Up With Love. I couldn't decide on my favorite of Mariana Zapata's sports romances, but I do think it's between From Look Up With Love and Colty for me personally. They're just both so phenomenal. This one's actually an ice skating romance, and ice skating is definitely something that I'm always going to pick up when it comes to a sports romance. So this one's not a classic scenario where you have a like male hockey player who becomes a pairs figure skater. We have an experienced pairs figure skater in our hero, and we have I would say semi-failed singles figure skater in our main character, Jasmine. So Jasmine is kind of at the end of her career as a singles figure skater. She's not had a lot of luck because she has a little bit of a mental block, I believe, when it comes to some of the more challenging elements of figure skating. Instead of hanging up her skates, she gets the opportunity to work with Lukov, who is, I believe, the owner of her ice skating rink's son. He's pretty wealthy. He definitely has a bit of an attitude and a little bit of an arrogance to him. And Jasmine's just really not sure that she wants to work with him. Neither of them have liked each other. They've known each other for quite a while, and they have to kind of team up in kind of a forced proximity situation to, you know, work on their skills and become eligible for the Olympics. So it was so fun to read because, again, forced proximity I think is so crucial in a good sports romance. You want to see these two characters have to interact and have to kind of like fight through their feelings for each other so that they can work towards a common goal. And I also think if you really love a caretaking situation where maybe one person hates the other, but one of them is sick and needs to be taken care of, you're gonna love this. I really loved that element of the story. It's just a fun read, and it's one that I need to reread soon to figure out if I love Colty or this one better. Let's hear what y'all had to say. Ivan and Jasmine just were the perfect enemies to lovers. They did for me what the hating game failed to do. Someone else said, I love a good enemies to lovers story, especially with two very competitive, stubborn people. Skating is a sport I don't follow in real life, but devour in books. Working together as partners requires so much closeness, trust, and passion. What more could we want for a sports romance? And lastly, while I don't don't typically enjoy this author's writing style, I do adore everything about this book. Ivan and Jasmine are just deep, complex characters with complicated backstories, myriad relationships, and a history with one another that makes this story that much more compelling. Combining that with the figure skating aspect, which is severely underrepresented in the sports romance genre, had me on the edge of my seat because I wasn't just rooting for them as a couple, but also for them as a team. There's just something extra magical about a hate-to-love romance where both characters are aware of the other's excellence, not just of their flaws. Honestly, I think I need to make y'all write the scripts for my videos because y'all are so good at telling me why you love books. That was killer. All right, lastly, let's talk about everyone's favorite Mariana Zapata romance, the one that really, I mean, by and large had like the most amount of votes, The Wall of Winnipeg and Me. All right, so I'll admit I read this book for the first time right after finishing Kulti. It just didn't hit nearly as hard for me, so I recently decided to reread this book. I'm actually halfway through my reread. I didn't get to finish it for this video, but I think upon reread, I am having similar feelings this time around that I did the first time, which is to say that I think sometimes with a slow burn romance, especially Mariana Zapata's, it can be challenging to, I guess, walk the line between a grumpy hero and then an asshole. And I think in this particular circumstance, I think Adrian kind of falls more into the asshole side of things than the grumpy hero side of things, but a lot of people apparently disagree with me. This book's about our main character who is Canadian, but he plays football in America, and unfortunately, because of some situations with his visa, I don't know exactly how it works, he needs to marry someone so that he is able to continue to play football in the States. And who better to do that than his former personal assistant, Vanessa. So he asks Vanessa, begs her really to marry him. They get married in Vegas, and then now they have to like kind of pretend to be married for 5 years so this man can continue to play the sport he loves. And in exchange, our heroine is going to get her student loans paid off, which I feel like is so relatable. I think if someone came up to me and was like, hey, do you want to fake a marriage to get your student loans paid off? I'd say yes with no hesitation. I like the setup for this book. I do think that the idea behind it is super fun, and I thought that I'd like this one more because it focuses on a sport that I love the most, which is football. But I didn't totally love Adrian, and maybe my tune will change as I get farther into a Mariana Zapata book. I tend to change my tune a little bit, especially 50% mark on, because her stuff, before that, like for the 50% mark, not much is happening, so we shall see. But let's hear what y'all have to say because so many of y'all love this book. Honestly, I didn't believe that I liked slow burn before I started reading Mariana Zapata. I love the way you get to know Aiden as a character so slowly and how you see Aiden and Vanessa develop this wonderful connection. Also, finally, someone who actually seems to think about all of the consequences of a fake marriage before agreeing to it. Someone else said that a lot of authors don't seem to be able to handle the fine line between having a grumpy main character and one that's an absolute dick anymore. Okay, I'll let you have it. But they all can look to Aiden Graves as the blueprint. I started this book not being able to stand Aiden, just like Vanessa. Every interaction and every thoughtful gesture, Mariana Zapata really shows us how much Aiden cares for Vanessa and vice versa. It's everything. Also, with Aiden not being much of a talker, his lines just hit harder. Touch my wife again and I'll break every bone in your goddamn body. Sir. And you know what? I'll let you have that one, okay? I'll let you have it. In comparison to Zapata's other books, the slow burn really worked for me. I really felt the yearning between the characters, and the slow reveal of how much he has loved her all along was everything to me. I also enjoy that Aiden is more of a grump because in all of my suspension of disbelief when reading romance, I just cannot picture a charismatic and outgoing movie star or sports star not being a total asshole. In the world of sports romance, this has got to be the GOAT. Now, we'll have to agree to disagree on that note, but I definitely can appreciate y'all's excitement and love of this particular book and all of the books on this list. Almost all of these books I love, but even for the ones that I don't, I can totally see how other people could love them, and y'all just make great points. Y'all are fantastic at this. So those are the 10 best sports romances of all time, according to you. So many of these, again, are not only my favorite sports romances, but also some of my favorite romances of all time. So I hope you were able to find at least one book on this list to give a try. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I have such a fun time filming these, and I don't want to stop here. So I've decided that I am going to continue on with this video idea where I gain subscriber recommendations for a particular subgenre or a particular trope, and I'm going to actually start moving into the trope territory. So instead of just like telling you the best contemporary romances of all time, we're going to talk about the best enemies to lovers romances of all time. This corresponds pretty perfectly with the series that I'm doing on my channel where I pick a particular book trope and read like 5 or 6 books in a week in that particular trope to see like which trope is the best. And it just got me curious, like what are the best books within a trope, right? Like I'm picking the books based on a couple of different people's recommendations, but I want to see like time and again, what are the best enemies to lovers romances, right? Like I think this video series is a good way to explore that. So if you would like to participate and submit a book for consideration for the Enemies to Lovers, like best, most popular, whatever, I am going to leave a Google form in the description down below, completely anonymous. Give me the title of the book, the author's name, and then also why you loved the book. You can skip that latter part if you want to, but I would love to know why you love the book, so that way maybe you could be featured in the, subscribers tell me part of the video. There are a couple additional instructions on the form itself. Mostly just please don't submit any YA titles or YA adjacent titles. Like, please just know Sarah J. Maas. Love her. I don't really need any SJM books for an Enemies to Lovers recommendation video. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you were able to find a recommendation. In the comments down below, let me know if you have any other great sports romance recommendations so that whoever comes to this video, whether it's tomorrow or 10 years from now, can find even more sports romances to love. I love y'all so much. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time.